Police officers of Reddit, what's the craziest situation you've been in? I'll add a few others I know to be nutty, but he never gives out because of various reasons. 1. The King 92 riots. He was stationed at the infamous Rampart station when these occurred as a patrol supervisor. We didn't see him for roughly a month, as he was often in the field managing a small group of officers who would move from one intersection to another, mounting high visibility defense for 24+ hours to discourage rioting. This job amounted to them finding a high ground they could park the patrol cars in. Half the officers would then stand around the cars in tactical gear while the other half slept in the cars. 2. Frankly, I'd say his entire 9 years at Rampart were insane. The whole Rampart scandal broke out during his time there, and he obviously knew and worked with most of them at some point. I knew a few of them from spending a lot of time at the station LAPD get-togethers. Some of the most surreal bullshit happened as part of this scandal, and the movie is a goddamn travesty, not just for that meme-worthy armor, but the fact it didn't tackle the wild shit that went down. 3. Prior to Rampart he did a stint with Air Division. He relates that often as the officer, he would be strapped into a harness and then would step out of the helicopter while it was flying, and would stand on the landing skid, leaning out until the harness supported him. This was 83 to 86. He spent most of the LA Summer Olympics like this. 4. The one shooting he speaks about was a situation that unfortunately isn't the rarest for police, but scares the piss out of me to think about. And added to my father's existing PTSD issues from Vietnam. He and his partner were called to a domestic dispute. The neighbors called in because it was getting louder than usual. They parked on the street at the end of the driveway to the home, and the moment they exited the car, the man pushed his wife and 2 kids out the door on the end of a shotgun. They all proceeded to have a shouting match while the man continued to hold his wife and kids at gunpoint. They were pleading of course for him to put it down, let them go, and everything could be sorted out peacefully then. He wasn't having it. During the argument, the man pointed the shotgun at my father and his partner and fired at them. My dad and his partner returned fire at the same time. My dad ended the story there for many years, saying the man died there, either my shot or my partner's connected. My mother filled in the blanks, the partner's shot went high. My dad's got him in the chest, just below the shoulder. He was dead before EMTs arrived. About 20 years afterwards he finally opened up about the PTSD he had from this incident. We were right, and every day I think about it, there's nothing I would change about what we did. Given all the circumstances, it was the right decision. If he was willing to attempt to gun down the police, we couldn't know what would happen to his family after he had shot us. Still, I shot him and killed him while his wife and young kids stood right next to him. They might someday understand why I did what I did, might understand what a bad person their dad was, but I still killed their dad, right in front of them. Now that I'm a father too, I get exactly where he's coming from and why he can't shake the circumstances, even though he is convinced he did the best he could with the situation. I ain't a cop, but my dad is, and this happened when I was on a ride along with him quite a few years ago, relatively short one this time. After eating our lunch, we went down to a runoff point so he could finish some of his reports. That's usually why you see a lot of cops on the side somewhere that isn't directly connected to the main road. I was on my phone watching some videos, when he got called in to check something that was happening up the road. I was sitting in the car the entire time this happened. Headed up the road to a construction site. By that time it had been active but non-progressing for 5 years. Where a bunch of people were just standing around looking weird, dressed in weird suits and obvious fake construction costumes with fake hard hats. A representative of the construction company had called the police down when these people showed up and didn't say a single thing for hours. Backup arrived and about 6 cops were trying to get 24 people to say anything. After a half hour passed, every single one of the trespassers began to dance and music began to blare from portable speakers. It went on until the song ended. At which point one of the dancers stood up and said, "Danielle, Kyle has an important question for you." Everyone was motionless until the person who stood up started looking around and asked if either of those people were there. It took another 5 minutes before a threat of arresting everyone came to head and got the speaker to finally begin talking about what was going on. Turns out someone had hired a flash mob crew. They were a bigger thing back then, for a marriage proposal, but no one showed up. After all of that was done, my dad found out that the person who hired the flash mob did so to rob a jewelry store up the road and assumed that the flash mob would draw all the police to the site. Not having enough intelligence to realize a flash mob trespassing on a mostly empty machine-free yard wouldn't rank higher than an armed robbery of a jewelry store. The guy was clever in a yes, no kind of way. The idea was logical but the execution and targets were absolute dog shit. He bragged about it. And was stupid enough to think that saying you can't prove the flash mob was me. When literally no one asked him about the flash mob, he was smart but also extremely dumb. His name was actually Kyle, his wife is actually named Danielle, and he paid the flash mob crew with his own money. Dumb. I would pay to have a video of his lawyer's face. I doubt it was a fun day for them. Not an officer, Dad was. Told me about the one time he experienced a suspect dying on him. He only told me that he was chasing down one white kid, and he suspects him to be high as fuck because he's running fast as a dog on a rat. Kid tries to climb a gate or something, but Dad grabs him and boom. Kid's dead in his arms. Dad, a black police officer, starts thinking, ooh, fuck. They're gonna say I killed this white boy. This takes place in Florida, if that clears anything up. Probably won't. Come to find out, the guy had been high as fuck alright. High on cocaine to the point of cocaine psychosis. As Dad had grabbed him, his heart either exploded or gave out. Fuck. Dad didn't get in trouble, but this puts all this Florida man crap into perspective. Also told me about how he slapped a dirty crooked superior officer so bad the guy flinched around him. Dad's dad saw this and said, "You was a mean officer, wasn't you?" To which Dad replies in his usual blood-knightedness, "Yes sir." A guy on a sports team I play in is a drug squad cop and told us the following story. They had staked out a meth lab house for a while and surveilled the house with pinhole cameras for some time. They'd noticed that the occupants were becoming increasingly erratic. Someone senior suggested it was due to them not replacing the filters in their protective masks. Anyway, at some stage they decide it's time to go in, so tactical enter and grab all the guys and clear the rooms. Then a chemical team go in to make sure everything is safe. Eventually my mate and his team go in to collect evidence with a few young uniforms to help. The house is a bit of a shambles but nothing too unexpected, until one of the uniforms picks up a large rubber dildo and starts playing around with it in front of everybody. The senior then tells him, "You know that while reviewing all the footage on this place we never saw any women entering or leaving this house, and why are you the only one not wearing gloves?" My uncle was called to a scene where there was a raccoon hit by a car but was still alive and making a ton of noise in a residential area. He got there with his cruiser and all they can do is finish the job. He went over it with his cruiser again. After a second it began crying out again. So he went over it a second time. Same shit. Still crying out, and at this point, he's feeling fucking awful. So he goes over it a third time and gets out and checks it out. The raccoon was finally dead. Then he hears someone yell from a window across the street, "I think you got it that time." My uncle was horrified and worried he'd get into trouble because I believe the correct action is to use your gun, but he didn't want to have to fill out the paperwork and clean his weapon for a small animal roadkill call. He did leave the patrol about a year later for a desk job because most of his calls were roadkill related or cultists in my crazy ass state. My brother is a cop and he often shares his stories with me. I guess I could say this story is NSFW. Anyways, he tells me that he received a call from a dispatcher saying that there has been screams reported in an apartment building. There were no other details. My brother reports to the scene, just outside the door of the apartment building. Sure enough, there's yelling. A lady is belligerently yelling, "Get it out, get it out." My brother pounds on the locked door. The lady eventually responds, saying, "I can't get to the door, please, help me. Maybe my son can get the door. I need to get it out." My brother waits a bit, still not knowing what's going on. He hears a voice of a little boy, saying that he can't reach the doorknob to unlock it. My brother talks him through some steps he can take to unlock the door. Finally, the little boy is able to unlock it. He opens the door. A violently putrid smell hits me brother immediately. The little boy seems clueless and quiet. My brother notices burnt spoons and drugs. My memory has failed me specifically which, scattered across the floor. He follows the voice to the room, still yelling, "Please help, get it out." He enters the room and there is blood splattered absolutely everywhere, the floor, the walls. He sees a man with his fist inside the yelling woman's vagina. She continues to yell, "Get it out, I can feel the demon inside me, get it out." Not sure how the whole situation was de-escalated. However, after further investigation, turns out the heavy drug-using couple went to a psychic fortune teller where the lady was told that she has something evil inside of her, something along those lines. Shortly after, the couple made their way to the apartment and have sex. As he is inside of her, he says, "I think I can feel the demon inside of you. Can you feel it?" And she responds, "Yes, I do feel it. Put your hand in there. Get the demon out. Get it out." Which leads to the scene that my brother walks into. TL, Dr. Heavy drug-using couple believe there is a demon inside the woman of relationship after a psychic reading. They have sex and both believe they feel the demon inside her. This leads to the man digging inside her vagina with his hand in order to evacuate said demon. My first day on the job with a small department, get an animal complaint at a house along the river. RP states there are some angry geese in her yard that won't let her out her door. My FTO, field training officer, and I roll up. Sure enough, a gaggle of 8 big angry geese in the yard are basically barricading the little old lady in her house. We try to make noise and scatter them. They have no fear and go on the offensive. We retreat to take cover behind the squad car as we formulate a plan. We decide we will use the dog control poles, which we normally use to wrangle loose dogs, to try and catch the geese while keeping them a safe distance from us. The FTO gives me the brand new pole that has yet to be used. The FTO and I both grab a pole and head back into battle. I get close to one and it takes off running. I follow in hot pursuit. I get within reach and make a diving leap with the pole and somehow manage to get the noose around its neck and pull it tight. As my body crashes to the ground, the pole falls free of my grasp. I watch in shock as the damn goose runs into the river dragging the brand new control pole behind. I figured the goose would slip the noose once in the water and the pole would go to the bottom of the river. Great, now the chief is gonna be pissed I lost the brand new pole in the river. Well, the next day we got a call from a bus driver reporting kids on the bus were upset that they could see a dead goose as they crossed the bridge and it appeared someone strangled it with some kind of polo F. Sure enough, that damn goose from the day before never shook the noose and managed to get the pole stuck on a piece of driftwood. Pulled the noose tight and strangled itself right in view of the school kids heading over the bridge on the bus. The FTO and I headed over to the boat launch and commandeered a pontoon boat, headed to the dead goose and plucked it from the river. The boater was not quite sure what to think of the whole ordeal, but we all ended up having a good laugh and I got our new animal control pole back. I never lived it down. TL. Doctor, got in an altercation with a goose, lost the department's new animal control pole, upset a bunch of kids on their way to school and commandeered a boat to retrieve the now accidentally dead goose.
Two-Face, letting the blow, plus getting the dough. We be checking your hole while you sweating the flow. I be intellectual, incredible, flexible. I turn the virgin sexual, impeccable, but technical. I be the first letter, you ain't know, check the alphabetical order. My natural elements, chemical slaughter, to leave it cruel. More bloodier than menstrual waters. On the 28th, your thoughts are pennyweight, I'ma generate these bonds.
watch as I detonate.
At any rate, I separate like races, niggas segregate you featherweights.